independently people were naming names which were the same names, so they're giving stories that corroborated each other. Some of the names that were revealed to me indicated that these were in some cases people who were in senior positions or had been in senior positions in public life.
They used to come up and get you out of the bedroom, take you down. I wondered where we were going, take you down to a basement, take you down to everything, and then they started stepping us up, I get physically abused, sexually abused, they burnt me, they cigarette burns, they stabbed me, burnt my leg and all sorts.
You live in the world and you know you're dead inside. I'm dead inside now. I've been dead inside for years. And, on the outside I'm alive, but inside I'm dead. So who knows what you do? If you're, if you've got no hope for nothing. I'm scared, man. I'm scared of myself. I know what I can be like. I mean, I've got a dark secret. Very, very, very dark secret.
We'd be these wonderful kids that they were happy to have, and then behind closed doors we were treated like shit, really. And he called me into his room. And I had to do stuff to him that we shouldn't have done. It was our little secret.
They're not just bad people, they are thoroughly incompetent bad people. There was a concerted, corrupt conspiracy by senior figures in the Jersey establishment. I'm certain of it. I defy anybody to take a long, serious, hard look at all of the evidence and come to any different conclusion.
For me, I came from a background on Wall Street, not anything related to what a lot of you are all looking at and thinking about doing with your lives. And I was an investigative journalist, but I would probably characterize myself as a very standard journalist. I was writing for the Wall Street Journal out of college. I spent a lot of time introducing myself and speaking to traders and bankers, and a lot of the people that, my understanding is that School for International Trading isn't really too fond of. And I didn't really think I would ever stumble into a project like this. But while I was living in London, I started traveling to the Channel Islands, which are just off the coast of England in the English Channel. And they're actually closer to France. And I became very friendly with the people in Jersey. Jersey actually has a family from long ago that owns New Jersey, the Carteret family. So it does have connection with New Jersey, but it's from long ago. And the island of Jersey is the largest of 5 islands in the Channel Islands, and they are owned personally by the Queen. They are not part of the United Kingdom. It's just like the Queen owns rubies she took from India. The islands are really just for private possession, and so while the islands do ultimately answer to the Queen, they effectively have an agreement where they run themselves. And in Jersey, we have seen a pretty serious level of sort of fainting as though they are a democracy, but really gravely oppressing the vulnerable. And I became much more interested as I got to know people on the islands. It's a very, very prominent tax shelter. They will not say how much they actually keep on the island, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 trillion on a 9-by-5-mile island. So they really care about their image. They have a very strong clientele in the Middle East and all across Europe, and their image is everything. So when some of these things start to publicly come out about atrocities against children, which is what I've been looking at, it really threatens the island's survival in the truest sense of being able to economically survive. And they have spent most of their history in survival mode. They were originally part of France, and around the 1300s were incorporated into the United Kingdom. And during World War II, Germany took over the island, and they were getting ready for the final showdown on the island. So it has a difficult past where it doesn't feel particularly trusting toward outsiders. And in my case, coming in and looking at this stuff has gravely affected the community on the island. And it forced me to be a different kind of journalist, whereas when you're on Wall Street and somebody's, for example, embezzling money and they're trying to hide it from you and you're onto them, it's sort of like a very, how do I say, civilized game on. You know, I'm going to get you and you're going to try to keep me from getting you. But in the case of this situation where you have people who are, in this case, were children, they kept in children's homes and were treated terribly, and the word child abuse is not even close to what happened to them. They were just, war crimes and war atrocities are you know, the kind of level of what happened to them. They were treated just like animals, and it's been very difficult interviewing them because many of them witnessed the deaths of other children. Many of them suspected there was a lot of burials going on the grounds, and some of what you just saw, the remains that you saw in the picture, was originally identified as a child's skull, and the island hastened quickly to try to get rid of remains or obfuscate what the identity of the remains were, the age of the remains. And ultimately what you saw was classed to be a piece of coconut, which we still can't confirm, and we have no idea where that idea came from. But we can't get the evidence, so we can't. Part of this is forcing these questions to surface. So that's what I've been doing for the last few years, is working on this. And I want to just walk you a little bit through what it's like to actually go directly down into some of these things. A lot of you have talked about education, and journalists are also educators in a way. So not for the faint of heart. Definitely a very difficult project. So this is the island of Jersey. It's an aerial view. It's very small, and it's generally dominated, I would say about 70 to 80% of financial services, so trusts, hedge funds, banks, offshore wealth. And it's very much of a sort of a high-level, very wealthy culture, and then also a very oppressed part of the culture that you don't get to see as much of. This is the orphanage Hot Delicaron, which is the center of my work. And this was a place where, for I would say the worst of it went from the 50s through the 80s. So some of those people you saw were victims who had stayed in the home. Often they were children who were considered unmanageable by their parents, and they were sent off to Hot Delicaron. That's French because it was originally French islands. And some of them were orphans, and many of them were shipped over from parts of England and then never tracked. So we have spoken to different places in England where they said we sent children there, and then we never really found out what happened to them. In many cases, we can't even get accurate records like names because they didn't even bother writing down the names of many of these children. I think you saw this in the video, but this was the dig on the outside grounds. They used cadaver dogs, and many of the reactions that they saw from one of the main cadaver dogs was very. The dog identified a great many spots as being places where not necessarily foul play, but certainly human remains. This is the quote-unquote coconut shell. We started calling it jar 6 because it was the 6th jar with remains in it. And we're still trying to find out where this fragment is. We cannot find it, and we put in several questions to the government and asked for auditing trails, and several times the minister in charge of Home Affairs has said that he doesn't understand what is meant by an auditing trail. This is the lower chamber of the home, and they found there were several chambers that were sealed off where children had described very bad things happening to them. There was a great deal of things like rape by privileged people on the island who were being protected. The man you saw being interviewed in the video is Graham Cower. The head of the entire police force, and he's highly decorated by the Queen. he found that there were a number of people in the government and also off islands, including one former Prime Minister of England who liked to take his yacht to the islands and put children on it, and some of them never came back, according to some of the sources I've interviewed. Part of the problem is it's surrounded by international waters, and so there was a feeling of, well, we could put people on a boat and just sail off, and who's to know what's going to happen, considering the fact they didn't actually keep records of many of these children's identities. It's pretty hard to figure out how many children, aside from our interviews with former occupants of the home, how many of them actually disappeared. So as I did my investigating, I spent a little time in the neighborhood surrounding the islands, and unlike most areas that might have institutions, whether they're mental health institutions or places for children, usually those neighborhoods are not super upscale, but I found that was not the case on the island of Jersey. All of the areas surrounding the children's home are very, very upscale, and it is not unusual to find statuary that is somewhat strange. This one in particular concerned me because instead of it being a cherub, it looks like a child who is very young and has no clothes on. And so it's a close-up view of the child. But it was creepy to look at, and it's literally just less than a mile down the road from the children's home that I popped out again that I showed you pictures of. As I continued doing my work, I found that a book written by this man, Robbie Garner, and it came out in 2010. It wasn't available on the islands. It was a memoir he wrote about his time at Haute Garden, and he witnessed the deaths of several children. He also watched his brother get beaten almost to death, and his brother is no longer able to he needs constant care now. He was born healthy, and he's not mentally able to take care of himself after this beating. He had severe brain damage. And he wrote this whole book about how he and his brothers were put in the home and what happened to them. And the book was banned. So when I came to the island and tried to purchase it at every bookstore and I went to the library, they all told me that the book was not allowed to be sold on the islands. That caused a lot of trouble later when I said that publicly on a TV program, and I'll get to that. Stuart Seabury is a health minister of the island, the most popular politician on the island for quite some time, until he decided he wanted to advocate for the victims. There were almost 200 people who came forward about their experiences, and he was not going to step down about it. He was driven out of the government, and at this point he has been sued by the government so many times he is pretty much bankrupt, and he will not stop. He's going to spend the rest of his life fighting over this. So he's quite heroic, but in many ways I worry about Stuart because he's almost seen too much, and in much of this work you can almost get driven to the brink of your own sanity because you can't believe what you're dealing with. And this is a picture of Stuart at the very beginning of the investigation into the home, and you can see he's actually, it's funny, I see Stuart now, he's so thin and emaciated, and here he's still a member of the government, still eating very well, and has no idea what's about to happen. At this time, he actually thinks that they want to investigate. And as time goes on, he realizes that, no, they just want it to go away, but look like they care about it. So as I investigated, I was warned several times, this might happen to me. This is a stamp you will see on your passport when they have banned you from the country. So England is the gateway to the island of Jersey. And I was warned several times by some of the hedge fund managers who I knew on the island from my Wall Street days that they would take my passport away. And they said, they won't let you continue looking at this. And of course, being a journalist who didn't know any better and really stumbled into it all, I said, what are they going to do, take my pen away? What could they do to a journalist? Well, they decided they were going to try to ban me. And they locked me up in Heathrow Airport for 12 hours and they wanted to question me. But these days, questioning isn't about talking to you, it's about going through your things and trying to find something. So the idea was to find a reason to ban me. I don't think they found anything more than way too many shoes. And it took a very long time for them to go through my paperwork, because unfortunately for them I was doing my taxes, and I'm sure they were back there going through it all, saying, why are we doing this again? But eventually they just decided we're just not going to let her back in. I never got an answer why. Let's go back. Before you play it, I ended up going on a television program and talking about the book ban. This is a copy of the book. I had to buy it in England. And I went on television and talked about how on this island books are even banned. They try to keep their own islanders in the dark about what's happening on the island. And this was an astroturf response by a group of people on the island to my talking about books being banned. This went out on the internet literally 24 hours after my broadcast.
Oh, Jesus! Oh. Hi, I didn't see you there. You know, here on Boats of the Wasp we have a lot of fun. But if I may, I'd like to take the time to talk to you about a special friend of ours who's recently received some help.
Hello, this is John. John is from Jersey, and because of that, he has never seen a book. They were banned in Jersey during the early 19th century because the parish elders believed books to be the devil. But today, thanks to Leah McGrath Goodman and a change in legislation, John is about to see his very first book.
Thank you, Leah McGrath Goodman.
Go on then, John. Try it out.
That's right.
Stop it! Stop!
So that was sort of the beginning of what I saw as a social media campaign, and there were many more things that took place following that. I got a lot of Twitter comments, a great deal of young people in Jersey who wrote things like, just on my diamonds and yachts day, having my champagne, hello to Leah McGrath Goodman, and it just kind of overplaying this concept of they're super privileged and they prey on those who are more vulnerable. And the island's local paper is basically subsidized completely by the government, and so the paper will always portray things as really going fine, including when this orphanage was exposed. They tried to chalk it up as a complete and total massive investigation, a big misunderstanding, nothing to see here, and people reading this newspaper, it's the only newspaper on the island, they believe it. So trying to get to the heart of the matter while also not offending an entire island and mostly making them feel as though they don't know what's going on their own 9 by 5 mile jurisdiction is very difficult. And you have to really be respectful. This is where I had to really start being a very different kind of journalist. In the past, you just come out with the facts and that's that. But here, it's like you come out with the facts and they are living by a completely different set of facts. And that's very difficult to try to not make people feel as though they're fools. And it's insulting for them. So you have to really listen to them and why they think the way they think, why they've been led astray really by their own government. And I started to become a lot more involved with the politics of the island. The members of parliament, the island is its own small parliament, and then the members of parliament also in England. And this is MP John Hemming. He got involved in this because he had children sent from his jurisdiction to the island who then they lost track of, and they never really knew what happened to them. So he became very passionate about this cause and started to champion getting my visa back. And that was the beginning of a turning point, which I really needed, because when I was banned, which I didn't expect, I didn't have a lot I could do about it. I did call the State Department when I was locked up. The State Department said, they said, oh, what happened? And I said, well, they just locked me up. They didn't give me any explanation. And they said, oh, did they not feed you? And I said, no, there was hot cocoa. But what, you didn't like the hot cocoa? They just didn't understand that what was happening needed some advocacy. And this is your own State Department. You're thinking, wow, I guess certain things are just allowed. So this was when I first met John Hemming after he was helping me. And he ended up putting up a number of things on the line. He passed a parliamentary motion there was a Guardian article that came out as a result of that, and then there were more articles. This is the Jersey Evening Post, which is the government-subsidized paper on the island. And so one of the earlier stories was that one of their members of parliament, Trevor Pittman, had taken up my case. And he was also helping out with John Hemming back in England, the other MP. And this puts the word banned in quotes, like maybe I'm not really banned, or somebody says I'm banned, but it's not. You usually put things in quotes when it's questionable. So that was a problem. And then here they kind of tried to go even deeper and say that I had lied to the border and that was why I was banned, and they were trying to construct a reason not related to my work at Pop Delegaran as why. They kept saying, oh, it's just a misunderstanding, just like the investigation. And then they did another one after my television interview where I said there are books on the island that are banned and that the island itself has been kept in the dark about what's happening. And that was highly insulting to them, and they talked about this interview as inflammatory and insulting to the islanders. And when I spoke to the journalist at the paper, I said, I think you really need to take these comments in the spirit in which it was intended, and you probably have to be a little more open to outside opinions. So I also think it's a little unmeaning to say that something on TV is out of context. It is pretty hard. After I commented to her that them putting quotes around the word banned is ridiculous, and it's proven I was banned. So I also think it's a little unmeaning to say that something on TV is out of context. It is pretty hard to take something that's filmed out of context, but that was what she put together. And then I didn't speak to her again after that. But it shows that even members of the press can really not succeed when it comes to dealing with other members of the press. This was the petition that was the turning point. This was brought forward by both Trevor Pittman and John Hemming, the MP on the island and the MP in England. And Jersey really didn't like this because there were a lot of signatories from all over the British Isles, and it really it elevated the fact that they were trying to not only cover up what had happened in their children's homes, but that they were now taking the extra step of banning a journalist who had openly stated that that's what they were looking at. And this went on for quite some time. In fact, John Mine, who this petition is appealing to, his assistant called me and begged me to please take it down because they were getting emails from people all over England. So I for anyone who's thinking about using social media, change.org was really helpful for this cause. It really helped out a great deal. And I think ultimately it was the reason why I got reviews of that. These are my boxes that were sent back to me from the island of Jersey. They were all rooted through repeatedly. They had been sent to Germany, which does intelligence for Jersey. And then they had been sent to Kentucky here in the United States. And Customs not only ripped them open and went through them and did a very bad job of repacking them, but other boxes actually were razor bladed. And when UPS dropped them off here in Brattleboro, they just dumped them at the door and ran. They did not knock on the door. I was sitting right in my kitchen, and I opened the door, and I tried to talk to the guy, and he ran in his truck and got the hell out. So I called UPS and said, oh, what on earth happened? I've been traveling the world my whole life, and I've never seen such a thing. We opened the boxes eventually. We waited for them to come and inspect them. They refused. And they said they couldn't explain it because it was classified. I called a lawyer who I know in Washington who handles with international border situations with civilians, and he said, you're a person of interest when this kind of thing happens, but they'll never tell you. They'll never confirm it to you. And inside one of the boxes was a piece of paper that said, your package has a contaminant in it, and it was signed by someone in Customs, and it had a list of different kinds of contaminants, you know, like really bad ones. And underneath the last one, it had a little box and it said other, and that one was checked for me. And I thought, okay, what is going on? But that was the first time I felt like, even when I was banned, I thought, oh, maybe I just maybe it's all my fault. Maybe I'm not being targeted. Maybe it's just all in my head. This was the first thing where I came away thinking, okay, I'm being warned. This is a warning to stop. So thank God the Change.org petition worked out, and we ended up beginning to have conversations with immigration in England and New Jersey. And as a result, we slowly started stumbling toward me getting a new visa. For a long time, they didn't know what visa to get me, and so that was quite a bit of debate as well, and a lot of fighting amongst the members of parliament. But they finally gave me this visa, and I got this early this year, and that was great. And part of it was the press, the Guardian, the BBC, and there was one other really great article from a mainstream news source. Guardian, the BBC, and Fortune. They did not like being in Fortune because they're a tax shelter. They just don't want to be known for anything but hiding people's money. And then I wrote this article, which I couldn't really clip all of out, for the Huffington Post right after Miranda was detained. And this was just this last month. And I just think it's really important that journalists are looking out for each other, anybody who's trying to raise awareness, because it's not a one-off when somebody is detained because they're asking the wrong questions or the right questions in this case. It's definitely something that's done on a regular basis to journalists when you're getting too close to something. And I really would like for anyone who's considering a journalism career or just being active, even if you're posting on your blog and you're trying to travel to some of these countries, you should be aware that they might try to detain you, and they might also try to mischaracterize what the reason was for detaining you. Oh yeah, so this is more social media that Jersey had harnessed in order to trying to dissuade me from coming back. This was a Facebook haters page. I don't think, most of the people on the page seem to be invited to join, but aren't actually joined. But it seems that there's one man at the center of it all who he's been able to hack into Twitter accounts for all those who are working on this cause in Jersey. He'll often have us sending notes to each other, trying to say nasty things about one another, but it's really him. And he's quite good at hacking into Twitter. He's quite good at, he started this page, and at first when it came out, I think we didn't know what to do, because obviously you just don't want something like that out there. And there was a big discussion about, do we start a different page and have two fighting pages? And eventually he decided to just try to build the page solo, and he started this page. And so he'll often email himself through different assumed identities. So we'll like look and see, and they'll be like somebody who has no friends talking to someone else who has no friends. But it is a way to sort of keep track of what that dialect is on the islands. And there's been many more social media pushes like this to try to keep me away. But at this point, the first day you feel a little rotten when there's like a Facebook page against you. But after the first 24 hours, you sort of are checking it once in a while, like, why are they talking about me? You start to kind of like enjoy your trolls. So I've just decided to do that. And when I went back to Jersey for the first time, it was in June of this year. And because I wasn't sure how safe it was anymore, I brought a team of journalists from England with me. And the film that you saw in the beginning was done by this man on the far left, Tim Tate, from Interesting Films. And he and I it's a work in progress, obviously. But we're working on trying to get more interviews and more down. So using different media, not just print, not just online, but also film. And then these two are from a couple of the newspapers. They came in. Basically, we went all over the island and interviewed victims and just documented everything. And most people who talked to me thanked me. And it was really wonderful. We didn't ever pay at any restaurant. Everybody wanted to share and talk. And it was just such a wonderful experience. So no matter how bad it gets, I want everyone here, anyone who tries to do something hard that they didn't expect to do, to know that there is a bright side if you're stubborn. And I want everyone to consider journalism as one of the tools you can use, one of the many tools here today that you can use to affect change.